Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cool Choices webinar on coaching. I'm delighted you could join us today. I'm Kathy Kuntz, the Executive Director of Cool Choices. As a little bit of background, Cool Choices is a Wisconsin-based nonprofit that inspires individuals, businesses, and whole communities to adopt sustainable practices that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we're really in the thick of the business of trying to think about how you get people to do things differently than the way they've done them before, whether at the individual level or at the institutional level. And my own background is I spent about 20 years working in energy efficiency and leading energy efficiency programs, and by the end of that time had really come to believe that the core challenge was one of human behavior, not technology, and thus have spent the last 7 years here at Cool Choices really thinking about how we inspire people to change in the way that we want them to change. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to start by giving you just a sense of the recipe we use here at Cool Choices around change. So when we started, we really looked at a lot of different theories of change management from the business community, from the behavioral psychology and behavioral economics community, social marketing. And for us, the kind of most compelling model is this pretty simple one where change happens when there are 3 ingredients. And the first is that there's an easy path to follow for folks. So if you want people to take public transit and it's enormously complicated to get to the bus stop, it's probably not going to happen. Easy is really a barrier kind of thing. So can you remove the barriers that make it difficult to make the change you want to have happen? The second ingredient is social, and that's the one we're really going to talk about today. And by social, I mean, are there ways that people interact with other people and get signals telling them that a particular behavior or practice is more desirable than other behaviors? And so what are those social cues folks are getting that reinforce the change you want to have happen? And then the last piece is fun. And by that we mean really that it's more pleasant than what happened before. And in other webinars we've talked a lot about the kind of fun piece. We won't talk as much about that today. We're really going to focus on this social piece and how social influence, particularly from our peers, is really powerful. And I want to start by showing you a little video clip because I think sometimes we need to be reminded about how powerful peer pressure actually is. So let's watch a little bit of this. So that's certainly enough of that to give you the sense that there's this pretty powerful thing. So when you've got an individual, a stranger, recommending a practice at the gas pump, a pretty high percentage of people go along with that practice. Peer pressure is a pretty powerful thing, and I want to make kind of 2 big points about this here because there's a way that we tend to think about peer pressure as something that happens with middle schoolers about smoking, and so it's a bad thing and it only happens when you're a teenager, and I want to kind of explode both those things. First, as this illustrated, adults are very susceptible to peer pressure too, but the other really important point is that heeding peer pressure has its benefits. As human beings, we take social signals from those around us because over time that's been a pretty good bet for us. If I'm standing in a crowded place and the folks to my right suddenly start yelling, "Run," and run toward my left, I'm inclined to run with them, not try to go over there and figure out if it's a grizzly bear or a car that's out of control or something else that's creating danger. There's a danger, and I'm good moving away from that. So there's a way that these social cues and the peer pressure around behave this way versus that way can be really beneficial to us. So I don't want you to think about this as the kind of that paradigm of, oh, that's only about kids being pressured to try smoking or alcohol kind of thing. There's peer pressure around us all the time. There's the cues that I get at a football game, which are very different than the social cues I get at a funeral about how to behave. So there's all kinds of ways that we're influenced all the time, and that's a pretty powerful thing. And it helps us all fit in, which is a beneficial thing to us in our environment. The other thing to recognize about this is while strangers can influence my behavior, people I know, people who are like me because they work in the same organization or they live in the same neighborhood or they participate in the same activities, are much, much, much more influential than strangers. So there's this way that when we get to the kind of collegial place, these are folks who have enormous influence over us, over how we do our work, how we live our lives. And really, that's the point I want to make today is that there's this potential there for sustainability leads to think about, well, so how do I harness that peer influence? How do I get folks throughout our organization nudging each other in ways that are consistent with our sustainability goals? If there's all this influence going on that might affect everything from what people bring for lunch and what kind of drinks they're drinking to the cars they're driving in the parking lot, how do we leverage that? And ultimately, what we're talking about there is coaching. We want employees to be empowered to coach each other, to spontaneously say in the moment, hey, Bill, that's recyclable. Put it over there, not over there. Because that would have enormous influence, not only on Bill, but on everyone else who witnessed that. So we want employees to be empowered to coach each other. The trick about this is that being a coach can be kind of uncomfortable. There's a challenge, and particularly here in the Midwest, we're a little bit hesitant to become one of those people, those folks who intrude in what other people are doing, who might seem bossy in some way. When I think about this, I always think about as a child watching the show Bewitched and the neighbor Mrs. Kravitz, who was always coming over with opinions kind of thing. We don't want to be that person who is offering unsolicited advice. And that's what employees feel about this. So how do you empower them? And one of the things I think that's been really powerful in our work at Cool Choices is we didn't anticipate this initially, but one of the things that happens if you create a game context is you give people permission to coach each other. When we are in a competitive situation and you and I are on a team, we're going to collaborate to be effective. And that means we're going to coach each other. And so accordingly, there's a pretty powerful opportunity for you to think about how you create friendly competitions that motivate people to coach each other. So whether that's a competition among fleet drivers in different regions of the country who can deliver the most consistent MPG, whether that's in an office building, different departments who can more consistently turn off their computer monitors at the end of the day or when they're in meetings. Any friendly competition along those lines, construed with maybe the only prize is bragging rights, will motivate people to coach each other. We'll give them permission to coach each other because that game context, we want to be the department that's recognized for doing this. So Amy, you need to turn off your computer. Bill, you need to quit speeding because we want to win the MPG contest for the month, kind of thing. You've suddenly created a motivation and permission for folks to do that coaching of each other. And ultimately, that's kind of fundamentally what we do in Cool Choices. So our program model is to partner with businesses and local units of government where we go into workplaces, colleagues form teams, and over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, they earn points for the sustainable actions they make on a daily basis. And that creates this situation where there's a good deal of coaching going on between folks. When we look at the results from our program, we witness coaching all the time. We have folks saying, I feel like this gave me permission to talk about these things and to point out opportunities in a way I didn't have before. We recently did a big analysis of the ideas employees generated around ways that their workplaces could reduce energy and water and waste across all the games we did last year. And there are a ton of these examples where folks see like a procurement waste or a waste in how something is happening, but they're not sure they should speak up about it. And so creating this situation where they can have that conversation, where they can feel empowered to have that conversation. We also hear very frequently from players that they're teasing each other. They're, hey, that's not a cool choice kind of thing. All of that is coaching. And, you know, we've got teams who are in it to win it and very much on a daily basis encouraging each other to do things. Again, all of that, all of those conversations make up coaching. In every program we do a post-program survey where we look at how often people participating in the program talked about sustainability during the program, and typically more than half of the participants are reporting that they're talking at least weekly to colleagues or people at home about sustainability. That's a lot of conversations. That's conversations where they're encouraging each other, where they're sharing their accomplishments, where they're nudging people to do more, which is an important thing, and celebrating victories, and all of that together creates this environment of coaching where they're really creating a social norm that we're helping each other live the sustainability vision of the organization. We're becoming the advocates for this on the ground. And if you think about how powerful it would be to have every employee in your organization feel empowered to have those conversations, not just the folks who are on the green team, that's a pretty significant shift to think about. One of the other things we see pretty clearly in our work is, so even when a particular program ends, once people have that empowerment to coach, it tends to continue post the program. That we have participants saying to us a year and even 2 years later that they're still reminding colleagues when something is done in an unsustainable way. And that's the power of that you want to create. You want people to be empowered to be the ambassadors for your sustainability program, the coaches for it, in an ongoing way so that you can accelerate what you're doing. But really, that's the point we wanted to make today. Our aim with these webinars is to keep them pretty short so they're topical and front of mind. You are going to get an opportunity to review the recording if you want to share it with someone else. And certainly if folks have questions, there is on the right-hand side of your screen should be a GoToWebinar bar with a little orange arrow thing at the top. If you don't see the question thing, if you click on the orange arrow, it will pop open and there'll be a spot there where you can enter a question if you've got one. I will hang out for a couple of minutes to see if there are questions about particular things that I've said or haven't said about coaching. Okay, someone's going to test my knowledge of basketball now, asking me, but what about like the Bobby Knight coaching methodology? And I'm pretty sure I know what that would be, more yelling, and so certainly we're doing everything in our programming to promote positive reinforcement and coaching that is positively oriented. And partly that's recognizing that people perform better in an environment that has positive reinforcement, and that fun is a key component of all of this. And it's not fun to be shamed or to be ridiculed for your behavior. So really looking at how we try very hard to help participants understand that it's rewarding to catch people do the right things and celebrate that, and trying to create that model of coaching rather than the alternative. But yeah, sometimes you have to redirect folks from that alternative, but there's very little evidence that the kind of angry coaching model in the end delivers results in terms of behavior change, except that people want to avoid those folks. If there are other questions, I'm glad to address them. Otherwise, you have my email, and certainly you should feel free to reach out to me if you have other questions about this or want to talk more about how our program works or how we might be able to help you integrate coaching into the initiatives you're already doing, because it's a good strategy to engage. And thanks again for joining us today. At that, I'm going to end the webinar. Thanks so much. Bye.